Hi, you're watching Bloomberg Quint as India grapples with this second wave of COVID, all the increasing restrictions across states, and a vaccine rollout that people have their fingers crossed on. I'm joined by Vice President of CII, Sanjiv Bajaj, to talk about the business impact. Sanjiv, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. How would you characterize the economic impact of this second wave and the impact on business activity?
Menaka, good afternoon. As you know, till less than a month ago, the overall mood was pretty buoyant in the country. The economy was recovering well. A survey with CEOs that we did at that time as CII brought about quite a positive mood going ahead. Of course, this second wave and the speed with which it has caught up with all of us has left a lot of us gasping. And the focus at this point of time is to see how to curtail this second wave. And towards that, a number of moves announced by the government, and many of them were moves that were suggested by CII, which is to do whatever it takes to get more vaccines in, whether supporting the domestic players, whether allowing foreign vaccines through a proper process, opening up the ages so that all adults can get the vaccines, so that we can, because most of our factories, our offices have youngsters there. These are the people that are mobile, and if we can get them vaccinated, it helps us keep the economy going. So these were suggestions that CII has made. I'm happy to see that they have been cleared. We now need to work very quickly with the government to come out with rules that are simple and quick, so that we can start acting on them. So our attempt at this stage is to curtail the extent of this second wave, so that we can all go back to focusing on our businesses.
Right. I'm going to come to the expanded vaccine rollout in just a bit, Sanjeev. And I know, like you pointed out, the rules are yet to be out, but just to get some broad thoughts. But before that, your reading of the economy, specific sectors, it does seem that in this second wave, even states have been more cautious about the intensity of the restrictions or the lockdowns they've imposed, right? For instance, we were calling around manufacturers in Maharashtra over the course of the last week, ever since enhanced restrictions have been imposed in the state. And from what we can understand, at least, this is not comprehensive, but at least the big factories that we were able to call and reach said that it was almost business as normal. In some cases, they've reduced the number of people in the factories, but we aren't seeing any large production cuts as yet. What are you hearing on that count?
Pretty much the same thing. We've all learned from last year how to do things in a far more controlled manner, so that we can curb the spread of the virus and ensure that we are solving the right problem. We also have to be clear that we are not like one of the large Western economies. We have seen our government and the RBI support through significant stimulus last year. We can't afford to keep doing the same thing again and again. Center and states, I believe, understand that as well. At the same time, there is a challenging balance of lives and livelihood. Naturally, protecting lives comes first. Equally important is, by protecting livelihood, you're again protecting lives. So this is the balance that we are seeing states take. I can see that in my own city of Pune. We have seen restrictions get more stringent that basically prevent gatherings. See, uncontrolled gatherings is how this virus spreads. In an organized office space or in a factory, I can't say nobody gets it, but it's far more controlled. It's easy to isolate. That's not where you have the super spreader events. Everybody understands that now. We need to act on that basis, and on that, and let us hope, keeping that in mind, we can see, for example, Mumbai peaked early, seems to be stagnating. Pune, we think in the next week, 10 days, I hope, I'm not a health expert, but I hope is stagnating and will start trending downwards. And that will show that this is the right balance to maintain.
Right, but just given that CII covers so many industries across the country, what do you think, anecdotally or just as an estimate, will be the dip in business activity this time? Because we're looking at some of the, sort of ultra high frequency indicators, and they suggest that we're almost back to where we were, let's say, September, October last year, in terms of the cutback in business activity.
Menaka, it's too early to talk about that. And as CII, that's not a survey that we've done at this stage because we've not reached a situation like last time where we had this massive central lockdown. As for the first time, we were preparing ourselves for this pandemic. This situation is very different if it is handled through micro containment, through smart balance between what should be shut, what should be kept open. We will not have the same impact as last year. But as I said, it's too early to think about that. Our focus right now is to control the second wave and shorten that and reduce its intensity as far as possible. As that happens, we will then assess with our member base what they see as the likely impact in this new year.
You run a large finance company, Sanjiv. Would you have any read at all on what this is doing to the resumption in consumption activity that we had seen briefly towards the end of the last calendar year and the beginning of this calendar year?
Even towards the end of the last calendar year, actually the last financial year, let's put it this way, which was Feb-March, things have looked very good. If you look at our insurance business, we have seen the record numbers for the industry, especially life insurance in March. So in general, things have been buoyant, and that's why I'm hopeful that if we are able to localize and control this early enough, we will not see any significant impact. Naturally, it's too early to talk about it, so we have to wait and watch.
Okay, which then I suppose brings me to how businesses like yours are hoping to make use of the expanded vaccine policy that the government announced yesterday, where they have permitted private sector sales, or let me put it this way, open market sales by vaccine producers. Now, I understand there might not be spare capacity right now, but the hope is that, that will get built out over the next 2-3 months. Broad, big picture level view on how you think this will move from here on?
So big picture level, there are, I would say, 3 focus areas. One is as CII, we will work with the government, and we are part of the government's task force for this as well, to think through what are the rules for imports. Who does that? What is the pricing mechanism? Are there some short time tests that need to be done? But to see by and large how can these be available, because those vaccines which have been now used for over 150 million people are safe, as we know, as safe as any of them can be right now. So we should know very soon, I believe, from the government the path forward there, and as industry then, and including as individual companies, we will see how to leverage our own strengths in procuring the same. The second is in the distribution of this. And this is where, now that the government has announced it, we'll again see are there any rules from the central government, from the state government. Even the vaccine manufacturers are waiting for that before they announce their pricing and availability of supplies. And we have to do what is right, not just for our own employees, but for our community and overall as one India. So our responsibility, of course, is there to our own employees, but also to our local communities. And that's the practical way in spreading vaccination. So many of us have our CSR funds available. We hope that we can use that also for the larger community. For example, I know a number of large companies, and as Bajaj, even though Finserv, we are a financial services company, we've got approval for setting up a vaccination center in one of our offices in Pune, because we employ over 8,000 people in Pune. And that's going to go live any day. So it gets ready for the 18 plus, or at least the 25 plus workforce that so many of us have. So there are a number of initiatives that where pre-work has already happened. And as the rules come out clearly, and I hope they come out soon, then we can start acting on each one of these.
Okay, since these were recommendations that went from CII, and I'm sure other bodies have also recommended the opening up of supply of vaccines and the enhancement of capacity within the country, because we are, after all, one of the largest vaccine producers in the world. I do want to ask you a little bit about the skepticism on whether this will amount to, just, how do I put it, maybe only a certain level of layers within, private life being able to access these vaccines. So there's a lot of concern right now saying if states are short of funds, which they are, they're not going to be able to fund a vaccine rollout for the poorer sections of the economy of the country, whilst corporates might actually be able to spend on their employees. So what happens to the people who get lost in between?
So, Menaka, for us, every life vaccinated is a life saved. It's probably not a life saved, but it is multiple lives saved in that family. And as those people meet other people, we are in India not only the largest vaccine manufacturers in the world, but the lowest cost. And with the government giving those advances to the two large companies, they have their lead times, but we will see capacity increase in India itself, which will be available to everybody through central, through state governments, to the private sector. Now, what we are talking about is beyond that. What's available in terms of imported vaccines, many of them are more expensive. Not all of them will be that much more expensive, but yes, some of the American ones are. Now, we have an option not to get them, and they won't be available to anyone. Or we get them, and it acts as an addition to everything else that we are doing. And I think that's the right balance, because it is our joint responsibility to save every life. Keep in mind that in our businesses, most of our employees are all middle class, lower middle class employees. They're not super rich people all sitting over there. We owe it to them, we owe it to their families, and we owe it to our communities around as well. So I believe that this is the right decision to take, because it has an additive effect. It does not have a replacement effect as far as the availability and the administration of the total capacity of vaccines is concerned.
Okay. So far as my reading of the CSR law is, I don't know whether you are currently allowed to move CSR money towards vaccination of people. I don't know what your reading is, but do you think that if you can do that as businesses, that you might be able to go just beyond employees and look at maybe entire communities in and around those businesses?
So that's one of the suggestions CII we have given, and we are working with the government, that this is a time of emergency. This is a time where every single rupee that we have must be spent in the right manner towards this pandemic. And so in normal times, maybe you would not allow this, but in a time like this, we should allow, because those spends can then be diverted to controlling the current pandemic rather than building a particular institution for the future. Those are also important. But at this point of time, we have to do what's the need of the current hour. So we have made those recommendations. I hope that they'll be accepted.
Okay. Sanjiv, what else can you tell me about the combination of, let's say, fewer restrictions or at least a less severe lockdown, and hopefully a vaccine rollout that would take, let's say, about 3 or 4 months to pick up pace, and what that means for the first half of this financial year? Because there was great hope pinned on a substantive recovery in the first half. We've looked at the China GDP numbers that came in for the first quarter of this, calendar year. We were hopeful that in India we'd have a blockbuster first half, especially because of base effect. And now that's all looking a little difficult.
Yeah, because we are in this current situation, Menaka, we need to see what's the timeline over the next couple of months in controlling this wave. We know that with this not being a complete lockdown, the situation should be clearly better than last year. We know that for a number of businesses, the ability to work digitally, the ability to work from home is far better than what it was in the first quarter of last year. These are all the positives. But I would not hazard a guess at this point of time till we know how long this wave will last, what is the intensity of it. Currently, we are seeing, of course, while we've seen a spike in cases everywhere, it is a few states and a few large cities which are hit far harder than others. I'm hopeful, while I'm no health expert, as I've said, I'm hopeful that in Mumbai, we're already starting to see some amount of flattening. Pune should follow suit in the next 10 days to 2 weeks or so. So we have to also see how this spreads. And as industry, our members have been supporting the existing hospital infrastructure with additional equipment coming in and doing whatever it takes, because eventually it is about seeing that we don't overwhelm the hospital infrastructure. If we can keep that running, if people that actually need the hospital beds get those, the right communication so that everybody doesn't run to the hospital. As you know, 85% people are asymptomatic. They can be treated at home. So our focus at this point, Menaka, instead of trying to predict what's going to happen to the economy, is to try and do whatever we can to curtail this second wave. Once we believe that we are down that road, we will look at the economy.
All right, Sanjiv. Appreciate you speaking with me this afternoon. Thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you.